The sun had barely dipped below the horizon when the woman's car sputtered to a stop on the lonely highway. She cursed under her breath, stepping out cautiously, glancing at the surrounding desert stretching endlessly into the dusk. Her dog, a massive German shepherd with sharp, intelligent eyes, sat in the passenger seat, ears pricked forward. He was more than just a pet, he was a retired war dog, trained in combat, tracking, in protection. She had adopted him after his service, unaware that one day, he might be the only thing standing between her and death. Before she could retrieve her phone, the roar of approaching motorcycles shattered the silence. 3 men, dressed in worn leather jackets and reeking of gasoline, pulled up beside her. Their leader, a burly man with a scar slicing down his cheek, grinned wickedly. "Looks like you're in a bit of trouble, lady," he drawled, stepping off his bike. "Why don't you let us help?" Instinct screamed at her to run, but before she could react, one of the men lunged, grabbing her arm. She twisted, trying to break free, but the leader pressed a knife against her side. "Easy now," he murmured. "We ain't gonna hurt you, much." The shepherd erupted from the car with a snarl, launching himself at the attacker. But another outlaw swung a crowbar, striking the dog's side. He yelped and collapsed, stunned but not defeated. "Damn mutt," the man spat, shaking his hand where the dog's teeth had torn into his skin. "We should kill him." "No," the leader said. "We take her. Leave the dog. He won't survive out here." As they shoved her onto the back of a bike, the dog struggled to rise, his vision swimming. His human was being taken, and that was unacceptable. Painfully, he staggered to his feet, watching as the motorcycles roared away, dust kicking up behind them. His training kicked in. Injured or not, he had a mission. The outlaws dragged the woman into a rundown shack deep in the desert. She was tied to a chair, her hands bound tightly behind her back. The leader circled her like a predator. "Now, tell us," he said, leaning close. "Who's gonna come looking for you?" She met his gaze with steely defiance. "You have no idea what you've done." Outside, the shepherd limped through the night, following the scent trail. Every fiber of his being was focused on one thing, bringing his human home. Hours passed, but he didn't slow. He wouldn't. His training demanded perseverance. Every painful step forward brought him closer to his target. The cold desert air bit into his fur as he moved, his body aching from the earlier blow. But he had endured worse. His years in service had taught him resilience. He recalled the rigorous training, tracking down enemies in the dead of night, taking down hostiles with precision. He was built for this. At dawn, he arrived at the shack. He crouched low, ears flicking as he assessed the situation. 3 men. 1 inside, 2 outside. A fence, barely holding together. A truck parked nearby. He had faced worse. Silently, he crept toward the first guard. With precision honed through years of training, he lunged, his powerful jaws clamping onto the man's arm. The outlaw screamed, trying to shake him off, but the shepherd was relentless. The second man turned, fumbling for his gun, but before he could aim, the dog released his first victim and went for his throat. The second outlaw stumbled back, knocking over a crate, sending a loud crash echoing through the desert. Inside, the leader's head snapped up at the commotion. He grabbed his gun and stormed out, only to be met with a blur of fur and fangs. The shepherd barreled into him, knocking him to the ground. The gun skidded across the dirt. The woman seized the opportunity, kicking her chair backward. The force shattered the weak wooden frame, freeing her hands. She scrambled up, grabbing the gun just as the leader regained his footing. "Call him off," the outlaw panted, blood dripping from his arm. She aimed the gun. "You call off this whole damn thing." The shepherd stood beside her, teeth bared, eyes locked on the outlaw. The man hesitated, then slowly raised his hands. "All right. You win." Moments later, they were gone, the woman and her war dog walking side by side as the sun rose over the desert. He had been trained for war, but today, he had fought for something greater, family. As they walked, she glanced down at her faithful companion, seeing the fatigue in his eyes. She knelt beside him, stroking his fur gently. "You saved me," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I owe you everything." The shepherd let out a low, contented rumble, pressing his head into her hand. They would find a way back, together. No matter how far they had to walk, no matter how much pain he endured, he had her back. And she had his.